Hi, my name is Eva and I am here to talk about the French Revolution. Now, the French Revolution is oftentimes seen as a messy and very chaotic revolution. So, to start off, I'll answer what caused the French Revolution. The French Revolution took place in the 18th century. At this time in France's history, they had just funded the American Revolution. France also had an insane tax system. Due to both of these things, France was deeply in debt by 1789. They were basically bankrupt. The nobles and the clergy in France never paid taxes. Instead, France was taxing the poor to protect the poor. Now, that doesn't seem completely right, considering that the poor doesn't have enough money to begin with. At the same time, bad weather struck France. This resulted in a drought. The prices of what little food France had left skyrocketed to an all-time high. The poor could not pay for food and now were starving. Last but definitely not least, the Enlightenment thinkers in France at this time also led to the start of the French Revolution. In fact, these people started a new age of ideas, not just in France. The monarchy in France did not support the Enlightenment thinkers and their ideas, for they embarrassed the French monarchy and gave them a bad reputation. Their ideas made the people question their king, but primarily they made them question their religion. This obviously did not go over well with King Louis II. He was the king of France at the time. In an effort to solve the crisis, King Louis II called a meeting of the Estates General. The French Estates General is a general assembly that consisted of France's three estates. The first estate was the clergy, the second estate was the nobles, and the third estate was everyone else, they're the common people. The commoners consisted of a whopping 98% of the population. This assembly voted on current issues. However, the third estate, the commoners, could never come to an agreement with the other two estates. So, it broke off by itself and made its own assembly. This assembly came to be known as the National Assembly. However, the National Assembly needed a new place to meet. The only place big enough that they could find was an old tennis court. Weird. I know. Here they proceeded to pledge the tennis court oath. They basically vowed to not separate and to do whatever it took to revise the Constitution to support the commoners. In August of 1789, the Great Fear was taking place. The Great Fear in France was a general panic that resulted in many riots. On August 4th, 1789, the National Assembly decided to surrender class privileges. This meant that the nobles and clergy must pay taxes. It also led to an end of feudalism in France. Feudalism is basically a social system in which the peasants in Europe were obliged to live under their lord's land in exchange for labor. The National Assembly put an end to most of the Ancien Régime, which was the political and social system of France. The next major event in the French Revolution occurred on August 26th, later that same month. On this day, the National Assembly passed the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. This declaration stated that every man is born with certain rights that cannot be taken away from any king. These rights include security, property, and liberty. They integrated this into their constitution. Another big event in the French Revolution took place that same year in October. Due to rumors that stated that Marie Antoinette was hiding grain in the palace when most of the population of France was starving, peasant women stormed the palace. This soon became known as the Women's March. They demanded that the King Louis, and the Queen Marie Antoinette leave France. This march was successful. The King and Queen were afraid of the armed peasant women, and therefore they left France. This led to the beheading of King Louis II after he was trapped in the Louvre. These events were just simply the beginning of the French Revolution. During this time, the National Assembly was having elections for a Republican government. The second phase of the revolution is marked by the period of terror. During this period of terror, Maximilien Robespierre had thousands of people beheaded who were against the revolution. However, shortly following this terrible event, Maximilien Robespierre was found as a tyrant in Europe and was beheaded by the guillotine themselves. Next in the revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte was elected the first consul of France. This basically gave Napoleon the power to do whatever he wanted. For the most part, this marked the end of the French Revolution. Now, what were the outcomes of the French Revolution? One of the many outcomes of the French Revolution was obviously the change in government. Although France was a monarchy before and after the revolution, there were still some differences. Before, France was an absolute monarchy, and after the revolution, France was a constitutional monarchy. Not much change there. However, there was a new era of ideas beginning in France, resulting from the Enlightenment thinkers. Napoleon Bonaparte was the new leader of France for the constitutional monarchy. Napoleon used these new ideas to lead France. Now, how are the French and the Haitian revolutions similar? Well, most of the population in Haiti and France consisted of poor people, such as the peasants and slaves. Both revolutions were messy and had huge riots. Both were inspired by the Enlightenment thinkers and their ideas. In both revolutions, the governments were completely overthrown. And finally, the poor people and the slaves fought for equality among the people. Now, some differences include how in the Haitian Revolution, it was the slaves that revolted, but in the French Revolution, the civilians revolted. However, they were both the majorities and both had little to no power or money. When it's all said and done, at the end of the day, I believe that the French Revolution was a success. The main point of the French Revolution was to bring more rights to the lower class. This was achieved through the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. Also, the Enlightenment ideas that came about in the French Revolution stayed to help guide Napoleon Bonaparte through his time as a leader for France, and are still the big principles in France's government to this day. Finally, the French Revolution was a success because it set precedents for the Haitian Revolution and many more to come. Even though the government did not change much, the ideas in France completely changed to give people rights that they didn't have before the revolution. And this led to a successful revolution. And all of this led to a successful revolution. The French Revolution relates to the modern day because the core ideas from the Enlightenment thinkers are arguably the structure for many constitutions to this day. The overall idea for the government is to protect the people and their rights, and that all men are equal. Another example is from Voltaire, one of the Enlightenment thinkers. Voltaire suggested a separation of church and state. And that idea is still applied in governments to this very day. However, that was not the case before the revolution. These ideas have also led to many new Enlightenment thinkers and ideas, such as the scientific revolution. And finally, in our modern age, we have people that question religion and people that question the government. Questioning these things was a huge deal back then, and it was not done with a lot of confidence. That was before the revolution took place. Therefore, the ideas that came from the French Revolution are still in use to this very day. Thank you for watching. Have a good life.